Welcome to Monk's Temple. Before we begin, settle into wherever you are. Feet on the floor. Body supported. Perhaps you are lying down, walking, sitting. It does not matter. Simply bring your attention to your breath. Not because breathing is sacred. Because it is happening right now. Your mind can hold only one thought at a time. Give it the breath to hold. Feel the air enter. Feel the air leave. Do not change it. Do not perfect it. Just notice it. This is not meditation. This is noticing what has always been here, hidden not by darkness but by familiarity. The Buddha said the human mind is like a cup of muddy water. When the cup is constantly agitated, stirred, moved, the sediment never settles. The water remains cloudy. You cannot see through it. You cannot see what lies beneath. But when the cup rests, the sediment drifts down. The water clears. And you see all the way to the bottom. You have been stirring for a very long time. Perhaps your entire life. This teaching is an invitation to stop stirring. Not forever. Just long enough to see what has been there all along. Let me tell you about Elena. Elena was a forensic accountant. She spent her days finding hidden inconsistencies, fraud, deception. Her mind was trained to find what was wrong. Her mind was trained to distrust what was obvious. She came to a meditation center not because she wanted transformation. Her husband gave her a gift certificate for her 50th birthday. He watched her struggle with insomnia, anxiety, the way she clenched her jaw while sleeping. He thought meditation might help her relax. Elena sat in the back of the room, arms crossed, eyes open. The teacher invited everyone to close their eyes. Elena watched the clock. The teacher invited everyone to notice their breath. Elena noticed the exit sign. But something happened. The teacher said, "You have spent your life looking for what is wrong. You have trained yourself to detect errors, failures, inconsistencies. You have never trained yourself to see what is already here. Already present. Already sufficient." Elena did not cry. She did not have a breakthrough. But something shifted. She began an experiment. Every morning, before reaching for her phone, before her mind began its habitual search for errors, she named one thing that was not wrong. One thing that did not need fixing. One thing that was already okay. Sunlight through her kitchen window. Her husband breathing in the next room. Coffee that was hot and hands steady enough to hold the cup. She did not believe this would change her life. She simply did it. Day after day. 8 months later, her husband asked if she wanted to renew her membership. She said yes. He asked what had changed. She said, "I used to think gratitude was something you felt when life went well. Now I know gratitude is something you practice when life is ordinary. And most of life is ordinary." If this resonates, if you recognize yourself in Elena, if you have spent your life looking for what is wrong and never trained yourself to see what is right, please consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. Not as a transaction. As a commitment to yourself. A reminder that you are willing to see differently. The subscribe button is not a click. It is a vow. Press it with intention. The Buddha did not teach gratitude as an emotion. He taught gratitude as a discipline. An emotion arises unbidden. You cannot command yourself to feel grateful. But a discipline is practiced regardless of how you feel. When you are happy and when you are sad. When life is generous and when life is cruel. You practice not because it reflects your state but because it shapes your future state. Modern psychology confirms this. The human brain has a negativity bias. We are wired to notice threats more than opportunities, losses more than gains, criticism more than praise. This kept our ancestors alive on the savannah. But in modern life, it keeps us anxious, dissatisfied, scanning for disasters that rarely arrive while overlooking abundance that surrounds us every moment. Gratitude is not denial. Gratitude is not pretending suffering does not exist. Gratitude is the deliberate retraining of your attention. It is the practice of noticing what the negativity bias has trained you to ignore. Imagine standing in a field at night. The sky is vast and scattered with stars. But you have been trained to look only at the ground. To search for obstacles, uneven terrain, anything that might cause you to stumble. You become expert at navigating darkness at your feet. But you never see the stars. Gratitude is the practice of lifting your gaze. Let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel was a firefighter in Oakland. 23 years running into buildings everyone else ran out of. He pulled children from burning cars. He watched colleagues die. He attended more funerals than he could count. He did not have PTSD. He had something more subtle. Professional distance. He trained himself not to feel the weight of what he witnessed. He compartmentalized. He functioned with mechanical precision in catastrophe. This distance served him on the job. But it followed him home. It seeped into his marriage, his friendships, his relationship with his children. He was physically present but emotionally absent. Skilled at saving lives but incapable of living his own. His wife said, "I married a man who feels things. I need you to find him." Daniel did not know how. But he agreed to try. Every morning, he sat at his kitchen table with a spiral notebook. He wrote 3 things he was grateful for from the previous day. Not big things. Not profound. Just things. A good cup of coffee. The way my daughter laughed. Nobody died on my shift. He did this for 3 months. Some mornings he could barely think of one thing. Some mornings he wrote the same thing 7 days in a row. Some mornings he felt nothing. But slowly, the distance began to close. He noticed small moments of beauty during his shift instead of only in retrospect. He felt his daughter's hug instead of observing it. He cried at funerals instead of standing rigid. Daniel told me years later that gratitude did not save his marriage. He and his wife divorced amicably. But gratitude saved something else. It saved his capacity to feel. It saved him from becoming a man who could only function but never fully live. The Buddha said gratitude is the mark of a noble heart. Not because grateful people are morally superior. Because gratitude is cultivated. It is grown. It is not a gift bestowed upon the fortunate. It is a harvest reaped by those who till the soil of their own attention. Let us turn now to the second thread. The path is not a line. It is a circle. Gratitude leads to mindfulness. Mindfulness deepens gratitude. The Buddha spoke of sati. We call it mindfulness. But sati is not merely noticing. It is remembering to notice. It is the mind that returns, again and again, to the present moment. Not because the present is better. Because it is the only moment life actually occurs. You cannot live in yesterday. You can only remember it. You cannot live in tomorrow. You can only anticipate it. The only moment you have ever truly lived is this one. Modern psychology calls this the default mode network. When your mind is not engaged in a task, it defaults to narrative. It tells stories about the past. It runs simulations of the future. It generates anxiety, regret, rumination. And it completely bypasses the only moment that is real. Sati interrupts this. Not by destroying the narrative. By recognizing the narrative is not the whole of who you are. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was a baker in Detroit. He woke at 3 every morning for 42 years. He kneaded dough by hand. He did not meditate. He did not attend retreats. But Marcus practiced mindfulness every day. Not as a formal practice. As a way of being. At 3:47 each morning, while the sourdough rose, Marcus stood at his bakery window and watched the streetlights against the dark sky. He watched the light pool on wet pavement. He watched the eastern sky brighten. He did not think about his wife, though he loved her. He did not think about his son, though he missed him. He simply stood and watched. His son once asked what he thought about. Marcus said, "I do not think. I watch." There is a difference. This is mindfulness. Not thinking about your experience. Watching your experience. Marcus died in 2022. At his funeral, his son said, "My father taught me to stand at a window and watch the sky change color. I did not know this was a spiritual practice. I thought it was just waiting for bread to rise." The Buddha said the mindful mind is like a gatekeeper at the city wall. The gatekeeper does not chase everyone who enters. He does not follow them into the marketplace. He simply stands at the gate. He watches who enters and who leaves. Your senses are the gates. Sights, sounds, thoughts. They constantly arrive. The gatekeeper does not prevent them from entering. He simply knows what is passing through. Most of us have no gatekeeper. Our gates are unguarded. Every thought enters and takes residence. Every emotion demands citizenship. We wonder why our minds feel chaotic. Mindfulness is not evacuating the city. It is installing a gatekeeper. Let me tell you about Priya. Priya was an architect in Mumbai. Her work was her identity. When the pandemic closed construction sites, Priya lost her sense of purpose. Her mind, always occupied with blueprints, suddenly had nothing to do. It turned on itself. You are worthless without your work. You are a fraud. Everyone will discover you were never talented. A friend sent her a meditation course. Priya was skeptical. But she was desperate. The teacher said, "You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts arise and pass away." Priya did not understand. But she practiced. Each morning, she sat at her window. She watched the chai wallas set up their stalls. She watched the school children. She watched the stray dog stretch in the sun. And she watched her thoughts. There is the thought that I am worthless. There is the thought that I am a fraud. She did not argue. She simply watched them arrive and depart. And she noticed something. The thoughts always departed. Every single one. The most persistent thought, the most convincing thought, sooner or later, it dissolved. Not because she defeated it. Because thoughts are visitors. They only become residents when the gatekeeper abandons his post. Priya returned to architecture. But she returned as the gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper does not panic when visitors arrive. Here is what the Buddha understood. Mindfulness is not about bliss. It is about seeing clearly. And seeing clearly is not always comfortable. When you stop stirring the cup, the sediment settles. But it does not disappear. It becomes visible. All the debris you have kept in suspension, old grief, unexpressed anger, unexamined fear, drifts to the bottom where you can no longer avoid it. Many people abandon mindfulness here. They say meditation makes them anxious. They prefer the muddy water. The sediment was always there. Mindfulness simply illuminates it. Illumination, while painful, is the only path to purification. Let me tell you about Amara. Amara was a trauma nurse in Chicago. She worked the night shift in one of the busiest trauma centers. Gunshot wounds. Car accidents. Mothers holding dying children. Amara could hold a dying man's hand while calculating his blood loss. But compartmentalization is not mindfulness. Compartmentalization is dissociation. And dissociation always exacts a price. Amara developed migraines so severe she would lose vision. The neurologist said stress. Amara laughed. I know it's stress. I don't know how to stop it. A colleague invited her to a silent retreat. 10 days of silence. 10 days of sitting. 10 days of watching her mind without patience to save. Amara told me the first 3 days were torture. Not because her body hurt. Because she could not run. She could not save anyone. She could not be the competent one who holds everything together. She was just Amara. Sitting. Breathing. Watching. And what she watched was a lifetime of deferred grief. Grief for patients she had lost. Grief for the version of herself that believed she could absorb infinite suffering without being changed. By day 7, something shifted. Not her grief. The grief remained. Not her memories. The memories stayed. But her relationship to them changed. She stopped treating her mind as an enemy. She started treating it as a landscape. There is sadness. There is memory. There is breath. There are birds singing. All of these things can exist simultaneously. None of them require me to dissolve. This is mindfulness. Not the absence of difficulty. The presence of awareness within difficulty. The gatekeeper does not stop the visitors. He does not lock the gates or build higher walls. He simply stands at his post. He watches. He knows. He does not become the visitor. You are not your thoughts. You are not your grief. You are not your anxiety or your memories or your fear. You are the gatekeeper. You have always been the gatekeeper. You simply forgot to stand at your post. Mindfulness is remembering. Not remembering something new. Remembering who you actually are. Let us now speak of the third thread. Not because we have finished with gratitude and mindfulness. We will never finish with them. They are not steps to complete. They are muscles to exercise for a lifetime. But the third thread weaves through both. The third thread is the voice. Not the voice of teachers or parents or partners. The voice that speaks to you, about you, from the moment you wake until you sleep. The voice that narrates your life, judges your actions, predicts your future. The voice that never stops speaking. The Buddha did not call this positive self-talk. That phrase belongs to our century. But he taught something remarkably similar. He taught that the mind is shaped by what it repeatedly thinks. Not occasionally. Not in theory. Repeatedly, moment after moment, day after day. He called this karma. Not fate. Action. Intentional action. The mind becomes what it does. If it repeatedly criticizes, it becomes a critic. If it repeatedly despairs, it becomes a despairing mind. If it repeatedly practices kindness toward itself, it becomes a kind mind. This is not magic. This is neuroplasticity, described in the language of the 5th century BCE. Let me tell you about Covey. Covey was 18 when he walked into a meditation hall. Not by choice. His mother begged him. He had run out of ways to escape his own mind. Covey had been diagnosed with depression at 15. He tried therapy, medication, exercise. Nothing moved the needle. Not because the treatments failed. Because Covey had been engaged in a secret, continuous, persuasive form of negative self-talk since he was 11. He did not call it self-talk. He called it being realistic. He believed his constant inner criticism was honesty. Protection against disappointment. You are not that smart. You are not that likable. She is only being nice because she feels sorry for you. Covey was not aware he was speaking to himself. He thought these were facts. The teacher asked him one question. If your best friend spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would you keep them as a friend? Covey was silent. Then he began to cry. Here is what the Buddha understood. The inner voice is not just commentary. It is architecture. Every time you speak to yourself, you are not describing reality. You are building reality. Laying down neural pathways. Strengthening certain circuits. Sculpting the landscape of your own mind. Two people make the same mistake. One says, I failed. I am a failure. The other says, I failed. I am someone who has not yet mastered this. The mistake is identical. The self-talk is not. Over time, these small linguistic choices produce two entirely different minds. One believes failure is identity. One believes failure is information. The Buddha said, what you think, you become. He meant this neurologically. Let me tell you about Nadia. Nadia was a violin prodigy. At 12, she performed with a professional orchestra. At 16, she entered a prestigious music conservatory. Everyone who heard her said she had been touched by something divine. But Nadia could not hear what they heard. She only heard her inner voice. Your vibrato is uneven. You will never be as good as Anna. They will discover you are a fraud. Nadia practiced 6 hours a day. Then 7. Then 8. Her fingers bled. Her shoulders ached. Still the voice continued. At 19, Nadia stopped playing entirely. She could not bear the voice anymore. She left the conservatory and did not touch her violin for 3 years. Her mother took her to see an elderly music teacher. The old man listened. Then he asked her to play. She refused. She said she had forgotten how. The old man said, "You have not forgotten. You are afraid of who you will hear while you play." Nadia cried. Then she picked up her violin. She played one note. A single, sustained A. She listened to it fade. The old man said, "What did you hear?" Nadia said, "I heard myself telling me it was not good enough." The old man said, "And what else did you hear?" Nadia was silent. "I heard the note. Just the note. It was not good or bad. It was just A." The old man smiled. The voice will never stop speaking. But you do not have to believe it. You can simply hear the note. Nadia began practicing again. 20 minutes a day. Single notes. Scales. Simple melodies. She listened to the notes. She listened to the voice. She learned to distinguish between them. 2 years later, Nadia performed again. Not the prodigy she had been. Something else. A woman who learned that the voice is not the music. The voice is just a visitor. The Buddha called the inner voice the second arrow. The first arrow is the event itself. Pain, loss, disappointment. The first arrow is unavoidable. It is part of being human. Even the Buddha was struck by the first arrow. He experienced hunger, illness, death. He did not teach that we can escape the first arrow. The second arrow is what we shoot into ourselves. The story we tell. The meaning we assign. The judgment we level against ourselves. I should not feel this way. I am weak for being affected. This proves something is wrong with me. The first arrow wounds the body. The second arrow wounds the heart. The second arrow is entirely optional. This is what positive self-talk actually is. Not pretending the first arrow did not strike. Not insisting you are grateful for the wound. Simply refusing to shoot the second arrow. Laying down the bow. Let me tell you about James. James was a construction foreman in Houston. He supervised crews building highways. His patience was limited. His tolerance for what he called touchy-feely nonsense non-existent. But James had a daughter. And his daughter struggled. She was 14. Anxious. The anxiety had become something else. Something that kept her home from school. Isolated in her room. Something that whispered to her constantly. You are ugly. Everyone is laughing at you. You would be doing everyone a favor if you just disappeared. James did not know how to fight this voice. He could not swing a hammer at it. He could not threaten it. So he tried something else. Every evening, he knocked on her door. She usually did not answer. He spoke through the wood anyway. I am proud of you for getting through today. You do not have to believe everything your mind tells you. I love you. Just you. The you behind the door. He did this for months. Some nights he heard her crying. Some nights silence. Some nights she whispered, "Okay, Dad." His daughter is 23 now. Not cured. Anxiety does not work that way. But she has learned to distinguish between the voice and herself. She has learned to question it. Sometimes simply ignore it. She told me, "My father taught me the voice is not the truth. The voice is just a voice. I do not have to invite it to dinner every night." James would never call this a Buddhist teaching. But he was doing exactly what the Buddha taught. He was helping someone lay down the second arrow. We have spoken of gratitude, mindfulness, and the inner voice. But we have spoken of them separately, and this is a deception. They are not separate. They are not three practices to rotate through. They are three expressions of a single quality. That quality is presence. Gratitude is presence to what is already given. Mindfulness is presence to what is arising. Kind self-talk is presence to who is experiencing. You cannot be grateful without being mindful. You cannot be mindful while speaking cruelly to yourself. You cannot speak kindly to yourself while ignoring the abundance around you. Each thread supports the others. Each thread reveals the others. The Buddha used the metaphor of a net. Not a ladder. Not a path. A net. Pull one thread and the entire net shifts. Everything connects to everything else. This is why morning practice is not about checking boxes. It is about entering a different relationship with your own life. Let me tell you about Fatima. Fatima was a hospice nurse in Albuquerque. 22 years. Over 400 deaths. She held hands. Adjusted pillows. Spoke quietly with families. She was exceptional at her work. But she had never learned to be present with her own life. She began a morning practice not because she wanted to. Because she was exhausted. Not physically. Existentially. She had given so much presence to others that she had depleted her own reserves. Each morning, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea. Not drinking it. Just holding it. Feeling the warmth through ceramic. Watching steam rise. Listening to her own breath. No gratitude practice. No mindfulness practice. No self-talk. Just sitting with her tea. 3 weeks later, her daughter said, "You seem softer. Less like you are bracing for impact." Fatima thought about this. "I am not bracing anymore," she said. "I am just sitting with my tea." 22 years of giving presence to the dying. Finally, she learned to offer it to herself. Here is something the Buddha observed. Presence is not something you achieve. It is something you return to. You have been present before. Every moment of genuine absorption. Building forts from blankets as a child. First love. Standing at the ocean, watching waves erase your footprints. You have been here before. You simply forgot. And then you forgot that you forgot. Practice is not acquiring something new. Practice is remembering something ancient. Something you knew before you were taught to always be elsewhere. Let me tell you about Thomas. Thomas was a stockbroker in New York. 4:30 every morning. Asian markets before his alarm. Lunch at his desk. Emails during dinner. His mind always elsewhere. Future. Past. Projections. Spreadsheets. Thomas did not believe in meditation. He believed in performance. Optimization. Efficient allocation of attention. But Thomas had a son. The boy was learning to walk. 14 months old. Pulling himself up along the coffee table. Those first, terrifying, triumphant steps. Face concentrated. Arms reaching. Legs moving without coordination but with absolute determination. Thomas watched his son fall. Push himself up. Fall again. Something cracked open. He realized, with violent clarity, that he had no memory of his son learning to walk. He had been in the room. His body had been there. But his mind had been elsewhere. Projections. Charts. Spreadsheets. He had witnessed first steps through a glass wall of preoccupation. Thomas did not quit his job. But he made one change. Each morning, before checking markets, he sat on the floor with his son for 10 minutes. Not teaching. Not optimizing. Just sitting. Watching. Being present. I spent 43 years trying to get somewhere else, he told me. My son spent 14 months trying to be exactly where he was. I finally understood who the teacher was. The Buddha said presence is not the absence of thought. It is the recognition that you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts will continue. Visitors at a gate. Some welcome. Some unwelcome. Some indifferent. You cannot stop them from coming. You can only stop believing that you are them. You are the gatekeeper. You have always been the gatekeeper. You simply forgot to stand at your post. Gratitude is the gatekeeper noticing what has already entered. Mindfulness is the gatekeeper noticing what arrives now. Kind self-talk is the gatekeeper speaking gently to himself during the long watches. One gatekeeper. One city. One life. Let me tell you about Sophia. Sophia was a librarian in Portland. 31 years at the same branch. Dewey Decimal System by heart. She loved her work with quiet, steady devotion. But Sophia was afraid of the ocean. Not ordinary fear. Phobic. Incapacitated. She could not look at photographs of waves. Could not hear surf in movies without her heart racing. She lived 300 miles from the nearest coast and considered this essential. Then Sophia's granddaughter was born. In San Diego. By the ocean. Sophia flew to California. Held her granddaughter in the hospital. Helped her daughter recover. On the 5th day, her daughter said, "Will you push the stroller? I need to sleep." The stroller path ran along the beach. Sophia stood at the edge of the parking lot. Waves. Salt. Her body screaming. Her mind screaming. Every instinct told her to run. She looked down at her granddaughter. The baby slept. Peaceful. Unaware they stood at the edge of something vast and terrifying. Sophia pushed the stroller onto the path. She did not look at the ocean. She looked at her granddaughter. The stroller's hood. Her own feet. One after another. Moving forward. 20 minutes. She did not drown. The ocean did not reach for her. Waves continued their ancient rhythm, indifferent. Sophia returned to Portland. She did not move to the coast. Did not become a surfer. But she kept walking. Each morning, around the block. Looking at her feet. Looking at the sidewalk. Ordinary, solid, trustworthy ground. I learned, she told me, that presence is not about being brave. It is about being here. Sometimes being here means looking at your feet until you can lift your gaze. 3 threads. 1 net. 1 gatekeeper. 1 city. You are not trying to become someone else. You are trying to return to who you have always been. Present. Aware. Kind. The cup of water has been still this entire time. You just kept stirring. You can set down the spoon now. Let us now speak of what happens after you begin. Not the beginning. Everyone loves the beginning. The beginning is full of hope, the intoxicating sense that this time will be different. The beginning is easy. What comes after the beginning is not easy. What comes after is the morning you do not want to sit. The morning gratitude feels hollow, forced, like speaking lines in a language you do not speak. The morning your mind is so agitated that mindfulness seems like a cruel joke. The morning the inner voice is louder than ever, mocking your attempts to replace it with kindness. What comes after is when most people stop. The Buddha called these obstacles the 5 hindrances. Desire, aversion, sloth, restlessness, doubt. Not sins. Not failures. Predictable weather patterns of the mind. You cannot prevent the weather. You can only recognize it and wait for it to pass. Modern psychology calls this the dip. The period between initial enthusiasm and genuine mastery when progress feels invisible and quitting feels rational. Every significant change survives the dip or dies in it. Let me tell you about David. David was an executive in Seattle. He attended a meditation retreat and was transformed. 3 days of silence, stillness, the absence of constant internal pressure that had defined his entire adult life. He returned home determined to maintain this state. He woke at 5 the next morning. Sat on his cushion. Closed his eyes. Nothing happened. His mind was more agitated than before. His body ached. He thought about the presentation at 9. The email he forgot to send. How peaceful he had felt at the retreat. How impossible that peace seemed now. He tried again. Same result. Again. Same result. On the 7th morning, David did not get out of bed. The retreat was a fluke. Meditation did not work for people like him. He had better things to do. David did not meditate again for 8 months. What David did not understand is that the agitated mind is not failure. It is waking up. For 47 years, his mind had been in constant motion. He had never observed this motion because he had never stopped moving long enough to see it. When he finally stopped, he did not create the agitation. He became aware of agitation that had always been there. The retreat was not his natural state. The retreat was sedation. A temporary reprieve from the storm. When he returned home, the storm resumed. And David blamed himself for the weather. He told me later, "I thought peace was something you achieved permanently. I did not know peace was something you returned to, moment by moment, through 10,000 interruptions." Let me tell you about Yuki. Yuki was a potter in Kyoto. 30 years making ceramics. Her bowls were in galleries. Her teacups collected by connoisseurs. Her hands knew clay the way other hands know their own skin. Yuki began a gratitude practice at her daughter's suggestion. Each morning, she wrote 3 things she was grateful for in a small notebook. She did this for 2 weeks. Then she forgot. Then she remembered and felt guilty. Then she forgot again. Then she decided the practice was not for her. 6 months later, she found the notebook in a drawer. The entries were sparse. Good clay today. My daughter called. The kiln held temperature. She almost threw it away. But something stopped her. She realized her expectation had been wrong. She thought gratitude was supposed to feel like inspiration. Produce immediate results. Make her a different person, a better person, a more spiritual person. Instead, she had written 3 unremarkable sentences each morning and then forgotten about them. But she had written them. Day after day. Not because she felt grateful. Because she committed to the practice. And in that commitment, something shifted. Almost imperceptibly. Her attention retrained itself, not through dramatic breakthroughs but through small, consistent, unglamorous effort. Yuki kept the notebook. She did not resume the practice. But she stopped believing her failure to maintain it was evidence of inadequacy. She said, "The bowl cracks in the kiln. This is not failure. This is information. The crack tells me how to adjust the temperature, the clay, the glaze. The crack is not the end of the bowl. It is the beginning of understanding." The Buddha said the obstacle is the path. Not poetry. Direct instruction. Desire is not something to eliminate. It is something to study. Aversion is not something to suppress. It is something to understand. Restlessness is not something to escape. It is something to sit with until it reveals its nature. The mind that resists practice is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It shows you exactly where you are attached, where you are afraid, where you still believe peace is somewhere else. You do not learn to swim in calm water. You learn to swim when the current pulls at your body and waves break over your face and panic rises in your throat. You learn to swim because you cannot touch the bottom. The resistance is the current. The agitation is the waves. The doubt is the panic. You are learning, moment by moment, breath by breath, to stay afloat. Let me tell you about Ibrahim. Ibrahim was a taxi driver in London. 34 years. He knew every street, every shortcut, every traffic pattern. Passengers often asked how he remained so calm in London traffic. Ibrahim told them a secret. He did not learn to meditate on a cushion. He learned to meditate in his cab. Every time he stopped at a red light, he took one conscious breath. Not deep. Not special. Just a breath he noticed. One breath per red light. Some days he had dozens of red lights. Some days only a few. He did not count them. Did not measure progress. He simply breathed when the light turned red. After 34 years, Ibrahim had taken over 200,000 conscious breaths at red lights. No retreat. No cushion. No book about mindfulness. But he learned something many dedicated practitioners never learn. The obstacle is not the interruption. The obstacle is the belief that practice requires perfect conditions. The red light is not the enemy of presence. The red light is the invitation to presence. You will not practice perfectly. You will forget. You will resist. You will doubt. You will sit to meditate and spend the entire time planning your grocery list. You will practice gratitude and feel nothing. You will speak kindly to yourself and the inner critic will scream louder. None of this is failure. This is practice. The bowl cracks. The red light interrupts. The storm continues. And you continue. Not because you are disciplined. Not because you are spiritual. Not because you finally figured out the secret everyone else missed. You continue because the path is not about arriving. The path is about continuing. The Buddha practiced until the day he died. Not because he still had something to achieve. Because practice is not what you do to reach the destination. Practice is what you do when you realize there is no destination. Only this breath. And this breath. And this breath. Infinite red lights. Infinite opportunities. Let us now speak of the body. Not the body you see in mirrors. Not the body you compare, criticize, measure against impossible standards. The body as experience. The body as anchor. The body as the most direct path to presence you will ever know. The Buddha taught Kayagata Sati. Mindfulness immersed in the body. Not one practice among many. The foundation. Without the body, mindfulness drifts into abstraction. Gratitude becomes a mental list. Self-talk becomes more thinking about thinking. The body does not lie. It does not speculate about the future. It does not ruminate about the past. The body is always, unavoidably, now. Your thoughts may be in yesterday. Your worries in tomorrow. But your feet are on the floor. Your breath is in your lungs. Your heart beats in your chest. The body is not waiting for you to arrive. It has always been here. Let me tell you about Carmen. Carmen was a dancer. Not professionally. An accountant. But every Thursday evening, she transformed. Walked into a studio with scratched floors and mirrored walls and let her body remember what her mind had forgotten. At 48, Carmen was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It attacked her legs. Then her hands. Then her balance. She stopped dancing. Not by choice. Her body would no longer cooperate. 2 years of mourning. Not for mobility. For language. She had lost the only way she knew to speak without words. Her physical therapist suggested sitting dance. Carmen did not understand. You move what you can move, the therapist said. Your fingers. Your shoulders. Your eyes. The dance is not in the size of the movement. It is in the attention you bring. Carmen was skeptical. She was also desperate. Each morning, she sat in her chair by the window. She moved her fingers in slow patterns. rolled her shoulders in circles, turned her palms upward, then downward, then upward again. Not dancing. Remembering that her body was not her enemy. That presence does not require perfection. That the body is not a vehicle for performance. It is a vehicle for awareness. I thought my body betrayed me, Carmen said. I thought it failed. But my body was not failing. It was changing. I was so busy grieving what I lost that I never noticed what remained. The Buddha said the body is a raft. Not a destination. Not a permanent residence. A raft. You do not live on the raft. You use it to cross the river. When you reach the other shore, you leave it behind. But while crossing, you do not abandon the raft. You do not criticize it for being wood instead of fiberglass. You do not compare it to the rafts of others. You simply hold on and cross. Your body is your raft. It will not carry you forever. It will age, weaken, eventually dissolve. But it is carrying you now. And now is the only moment that matters. Let me tell you about Malik. Malik was a construction worker in Detroit. 38 years lifting, carrying, hammering, climbing. His body was his instrument. Calloused hands. Permanently curved back. Knees that sounded like gravel when he stood. Malik did not think about his body. He thought about the work. The body was just what did the work. Then Malik fell. 6 feet. Misjudged step on scaffolding. Something tore in his lower back. The surgeon said Malik would never return to construction. He was 59. His body had finally failed him. 6 months on his couch. Not because he could not move. Because he did not know what to move toward. His identity had been built on what his body could do. Now his body could do almost nothing. His daughter brought him a meditation app. Malik laughed. He was not a meditator. He was a builder. But he was bored. In pain. Desperate. He began with body scans. Not because he believed. Because his daughter set up the app and he did not know how to delete it. The voice guided him to notice his feet. Ankles. Calves. Knees. Malik had never noticed his knees. Only felt them ache. The voice guided him to breathe into the pain. Not to fix it. Not to escape it. Simply to acknowledge it. Malik cried for the first time in 43 years. I spent my whole life using my body, he said. I never once thanked it. Never asked how it was doing. I just demanded until it broke. Then I blamed it for breaking. Malik did not return to construction. He taught young apprentices how to listen to their bodies. Not for performance. For respect. Your body will not last forever, he told them. But it will last longer if you stop treating it like a machine and start treating it like a partner. Here is what the Buddha understood. The mind is not commander. The body is not servant. They are partners. 2 wings of the same bird. When you breathe consciously, you are not commanding. You are listening. When you feel your feet on the floor, you are not escaping thoughts. You are grounding them. When you notice tension in your shoulders, you are not diagnosing. You are honoring a messenger. The body speaks in sensation. The mind speaks in thought. Neither superior. Neither irrelevant. Practice is not choosing one over the other. Practice is translation. Let me tell you about Helen. Helen was 92. She lived in a nursing home outside Chicago. She had outlived her husband, her brother, most of her friends. Her body was small and folded, like paper creased too many times. Helen could no longer walk. Could not feed herself. Could not recognize her daughter on some days. But Helen still practiced. Each morning, staff lifted her from bed and placed her in a chair by the window. Helen closed her eyes. She felt the weight of her body against cushions. The warmth of sunlight on her face. The rise and fall of her chest. Not meditating. Not practicing mindfulness. Not doing anything that would appear on a retreat brochure. Simply inhabiting her body. The only body she had ever had. The only body she would ever have. Her daughter asked what she thought about during those long hours. Helen opened her eyes. Smiled. I am not thinking. I am feeling. My body breathe. The sun. Grateful I can still feel. Helen died 3 months later. Her daughter said, "My mother taught me the body is not a problem to solve. It is a gift to receive. Even when it is breaking. Especially when it is breaking. The raft carries you. Not to the other shore. There is no other shore. The raft carries you across water that never ends. You will not arrive. You will simply continue. But you do not need to arrive. You only need to stay afloat. The body is how you stay afloat. Not by making it stronger. More beautiful. Preventing it from aging or aching or dissolving. By inhabiting it. Feeling it. Thanking it for carrying you across another day of this vast, mysterious ocean. Your feet on the floor. Your breath in your lungs. Your heart beating in your chest. This is not preparation for presence. This is presence itself. Let us now speak of what the Buddha called the most important teaching he ever gave. Not gratitude. Not mindfulness. Not the nature of the self. He said the most important teaching is this: all conditioned things are impermanent. Everything that arises passes away. Every meeting is a separation waiting to happen. Every birth is a death delayed. Every possession, every relationship, every achievement, every identity you have ever constructed will eventually dissolve. This sounds like pessimism. It is not. It is the most liberating truth ever spoken. You suffer not because things change. You suffer because you believe they should not change. You build sandcastles and rage against the tide. You hold water in your hands and curse your wet fingers. You love beautiful things and spend your life trying to prevent them from becoming something else. The tide will not stop. The water will not freeze. The beautiful things will transform. This is not tragedy. This is the nature of nature. And when you stop fighting the nature of nature, you are finally free to love what is, exactly as it is, for exactly as long as it lasts. Let me tell you about grace. Grace was a gardener. Not professionally. A high school English teacher. But her garden was her sanctuary. 50 years of planting, pruning, weeding, harvesting. She knew the name of every perennial. She spoke to her roses. Grace's husband died in 2018. 53 years married. She did not know how to be in the house without him. So she went to the garden. That year, the garden was merciless. Late frost killed the peonies. Drought stunted the hydrangeas. Aphids devoured the roses. Everything Grace touched seemed to wither. Her daughter suggested she give up. Hire a landscaper. Plant low-maintenance shrubs. Grace considered this. Then she said, "The garden is teaching me how to grieve." She did not explain. Her daughter did not ask. Grace continued gardening. Not to control. Not to produce. Simply to be present with plants that were living and dying and living again. She stopped fighting the frost. Stopped blaming the drought. Stopped cursing the aphids. She planted knowing half would not survive. Watered knowing rain might not come. Weeded knowing weeds would return. She told me, "I spent 50 years trying to perfect my garden. I thought a perfect garden was one where nothing died. Now I know a perfect garden is one where everything lives and dies and lives again, and I am there for all of it." Grace died in her garden 3 years later. Her daughter found her kneeling among the roses, trowel in hand, face tilted toward the sun. The Buddha did not teach impermanence to make you sad. He taught impermanence to make you awake. If this glass were permanent, you would never notice it. It would become invisible, like your own breath, like your heartbeat. But this glass is not permanent. It will break. Perhaps today. Perhaps in 100 years. But it will break. Now look at the glass. Really look. Notice its clarity. Its curve. The way it holds light. The way it holds water. You are only seeing the glass now because you know it will not last. This is what impermanence offers. Not resignation. Not despair. The gift of genuine attention. You cannot truly see anything you believe will last forever. Let me tell you about Andre. Andre was a photographer. 40 years documenting things that were disappearing. Abandoned factories. Dying main streets. Last speakers of endangered languages. Old-growth forests being clear-cut. People asked if his work made him depressed. All that loss. All those endings. Andre said, "I am not documenting loss. I am documenting existence. These things existed. They mattered. Someone should remember." At 72, Andre was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. 6 months to live. He did not spend those months in despair. He spent them photographing his own hands. Every day, tripod in the living room. Hands on black velvet cloth. Photographed from every angle, in every light. His son asked why. Andre said, "These hands have held your mother. Held you. Held your children. Held cameras for 40 years. Soon they will hold nothing. I want to remember them while they are still here." André died at home, surrounded by photographs of his own hands. His son said, "My father taught me that impermanence is not the end of meaning. It is the source of meaning. Nothing matters forever." That is exactly why everything matters now. Here is the practice. Not to deny impermanence. Not to pretend you are not aging, not losing, not eventually dissolving into the same elements that have cycled through this universe for billions of years. The practice is to hold each moment as you would hold a butterfly. Gently. Attentively. With full awareness that it will not stay in your hand forever. Do not squeeze. Do not trap. Do not demand that it remain. Open your hand. Watch it fly. Feel the absence where its weight used to be. This is not loss. This is completion. The butterfly returning to the sky from which it came. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was a cellist. He played in orchestras since 19. His cello was a Matteo Goffriller from 1712. He named her Elena. Traveled with her. Adjusted his apartment's humidity to protect her wood. At 81, Robert's hands began to tremble. Parkinson's. The same disease that took his father. He could no longer play. His fingers would not obey. His bow arm shook. His intonation wavered. Robert did not sell Elena. Did not lock her in her case. He placed her in the corner of his living room where morning light touched her wood. Every morning, he sat in his chair and looked at her. He did not play. He could not play. But he remembered. First concert. Standing ovation in Vienna. Recording session in London. The student who cried when she played her first scale in tune. He told me, I thought losing my ability to play would destroy me. But I did not lose Elena. I did not lose the music. The music is in my memory. In my body. The music does not need my hands anymore. Robert died at 87. His daughter inherited Elena. She does not play cello. But she keeps the instrument in her living room where morning light touches its wood. She said, "My father taught me that you do not possess beautiful things. You borrow them. And when it is time to return them, you say thank you. You are borrowing everything. Your body. Your loved ones. Your home. Your health. Your mind. This moment. This breath. You did not earn them. You cannot keep them. They were loaned to you by forces so vast and ancient that your mind cannot comprehend them. The same forces that formed stars and oceans and the first living cell loaned you this breath. And one day, they will ask for it back. The practice is not to avoid this day. The practice is to live so fully, love so completely, attend so carefully to each borrowed moment, that when the loan is called, you can open your hands and say, "Thank you. I was here. I saw it all. It was enough. We have traveled far together." Gratitude. Mindfulness. The inner voice. Presence. Obstacles. The body. Impermanence. Compassion beyond the self. 8 teachings. 8 threads. But they were never separate. They were always one thread, woven through the fabric of your life. Now we arrive at the final teaching. There is no final teaching. The Buddha did not give his disciples a graduation ceremony. He did not hand them certificates of enlightenment. When his students asked him what came after the path, he held up a flower and said nothing. Because the path does not end. The path continues in every breath, every step, every moment of awareness. You do not complete the path. You walk it. And walking it is the entire point. Let me tell you about one more person. Her name is you. Not the you who is listening to this voice. The you who was listening before this voice began. The you who has been present your entire life, witnessing every joy, every grief, every ordinary Wednesday afternoon. The you who has never left, never judged, never once said you were not enough. That you has been practicing this entire time. Not because you attended retreats or read books or sat on cushions. Because you kept waking up. You kept breathing. You kept showing up for another day of this strange, beautiful, heartbreaking human life. That is the practice. That has always been the practice. The Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." He did not mean you must walk alone. He meant the light you seek is already within you. Not in a teacher. Not in a book. Not in a future moment of awakening that has not yet arrived. The light is in your own hand. You have been holding it your entire life. You simply forgot to look. So here is what you do now. Tomorrow morning, you will wake. Perhaps you will remember these teachings. Perhaps you will forget. It does not matter. Before you reach for your phone. Before your mind begins its habitual race toward the future. Pause. Feel your breath. Not because breathing is sacred. Because it is happening now. Name one thing you are grateful for. Not because gratitude will fix your life. Because gratitude reminds you that your life is not broken. Notice your thoughts. Not because you need to change them. Because you are not your thoughts. You are the one noticing them. Speak gently to yourself. Not because affirmations have magical power. Because you have been speaking cruelly to yourself for long enough. You deserve a different inner companion. Then move into your day. Not as a different person. As the same person who has always been here, always been enough, always been worthy of love. The monk washes his bowl. The baker watches the sunrise. The gardener kneels among roses. The photographer documents his own hands. The cellist remembers music she can no longer play. The father speaks through a closed door. The daughter keeps her father's cello in morning light. These are not stories about enlightenment. These are stories about ordinary people who learn to pay attention to their own lives. You are one of them. You have always been one of them. The path does not end here. The path continues in the silence after this voice stops speaking. In the breath you take when you rise from whatever chair or bed or cushion you are sitting on. In the ordinary, sacred, unrepeatable moments of your one wild and precious life. You have everything you need. You have always had everything you need. The cup of water has been still this entire time. You just kept stirring. You can set down the spoon now. Thank you for practicing with us at Monk's Temple. If this teaching has touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not as an obligation. As an offering. And if you have not yet subscribed, consider this your final invitation. Not for us. For yourself. As a vow. As a reminder. As a small, daily act of remembering who you are. Until we meet again, breathe. Be grateful. Be kind, especially to yourself. The sun will rise tomorrow. And you will be here to witness it. That is enough. That has always been enough.